Hello, I'm Odin, and today I'm gonna make a mask from what could be considered a game show. I'm gonna make the Red Guard's mask from the Squid Game. I'm gonna reuse a previous pattern to make the base for my mask. And I'm only after the dome pieces from my heavy Mandalorian build. I can ignore the rest of the pattern at this time. Thank you for your help. These pieces make the top of the helmet, the dome, and they are symmetrical. I want to remove just a little from one side and attempt to make something a little more egg-shaped or face-shaped. I take a little bit off the pieces that make the middle of the dome. The smallest part I'm not going to change. Hopefully that's going to be enough to get me more of the egg shape, more of the chin shape that the mask needs to have, because it's not perfectly round, right? It's not. So I hope that little bit of trimming is enough to do it. Let's put one together and see what happens. I still need to clip the registration marks for the pattern. It's funny, I got into the habit with using the pattern notcher to just take a little bite out of it, because I only need a little bit of a mark. But this is an old pattern where I would do the full depth, and so I'm just doing it again to follow the lines that I drew. So I only need this little niche. That's all I need. I don't need the whole half inch. Okay. I trace all the patterns onto a sheet of black EVA foam. This sheet is a little thicker than I wanted, but it was the best black sheet of normal EVA that I had. One additional thing. When I trace the patterns, I made sure to mark which end is going to be the chin. And I made a left and a right for each of the pieces. So I'm hoping that the small amount that I took out of the pattern is going to be enough to squeeze the chin together, right? And it adds up. Even though I took a little bit off the pattern, that's twice from each one. So overall, it's a considerable amount. I mean, it's still not, it's a little bit. But all I need to do is slightly change the shape. Even if this was a thinner sheet of foam, I would still heat each piece with a heat gun and form a curve over my planisher. Now the goal here is to start the compound shape, so any compound curve is going to be easier to put together than just flat pieces. And I'm using contact cement to glue together the parts. If you look, I'm keeping all of my registration marks on the inside of the mask. I am trying to not have to paint the face at all if I can. Also, you can see why shaping the flat foam before gluing everything together is really helpful. All right. May not be quite as egg as I want it, but I think it still is gonna work. One of the things I want to do is give this a little bit of time. The contact cement is still fairly fresh, right? I want to give this some time to really set up and dry a little more, and then I'm going to come back with a heat gun and heat it again, which will cause the foam to relax and find its new equilibrium. So and get me hopefully a new shape. But so far, for a mask that you can't see through, for a mask that you can't breathe through, I think I'm doing pretty good. During this time, the cement gets to dry out more. And it's not gonna pop open the seams nearly as easily now. You know, it still can. A heat gun can undo contact cement, so I need to be careful. What's happening, and sometimes it's easier to see than others, is the tension on the pieces are pulling on each other. So as the foam heats and relaxes, it forms a much nicer rounded shape. And sometimes the end result is really difficult to see until you paint it, at which time I often regret skipping this step. When I do let it cool again, I hold the edges flat to the table. My pattern is not a perfect hemisphere, so I do need to kind of help it right now. It doesn't quite have the egg shape that I wanted. It's good enough. I think the single most important detail about the mask at this point is the texture. Looking at it, well, honestly, what I see is a fencing mask. It's the protective mask you wear for the sport of fencing. I think that for the production of the movie, they bought a bunch of fencing masks and then added a little bit of detail to them and painted them black, or just bought black masks. As a movie production or show production, that would make a lot of sense, right? You're gonna wanna do something that's, start with something real, modify it slightly, because that's a whole lot easier than building something from scratch. However, I don't want to buy a fencing mask. And looking at it again as the video is being edited, I may have only been inspired by the fencing mask, but what I was thinking for getting the texture I wanted was using some screen. Now this is the same privacy screen remnants that I've been using for a while, but I think I'm at a point where these little pieces are no longer big enough. As an alternate thought, maybe aluminum mesh would work, but I decided this was not what I wanted to do pretty quickly. Another idea was to see if I could heat up the screen and stretch it over a form. This is a carrying case for an iron, the type for smoothing up fabric and clothing. But the screen doesn't really stretch much with heat, which is good, because that would be a serious problem if your screen began drooping and sagging just because, shock, it was in the sun. So I've been trying to get these scrap pieces to work for the big piece, right? There's one full piece that has to be the upper half of the mask, unbroken in order for it to look right. And I just don't think I have enough here realistically that I can pull that off. So about some new stuff. This is the first time I bought a full roll of this. Everything in every video prior to now where I've used this solar screen, I've been calling it a privacy screen, it's solar screen, has been the leftovers from a friend who had to fix theirs because their pet was super excited. Now I've got my own. Hardware store. It's actually pretty cheap. Hadn't appreciated how much of a vinyl smell this stuff had before, because I was working with the older stuff. I measure and find the center of the blank mask and draw my seam line for the top of the face. As I draw the center line for the bottom of the face, I notice something. It occurs to me as I'm just making Sharpie marks on this, just so I can know where I need to cut the screen to make it fit to have the screen pattern. If I take the Sharpie, I can actually color in the exposed contact cement, which will eliminate the light lines, and that might actually help. I wonder, you probably wouldn't be able to see them through the mesh, but you definitely won't now. This of course means I'm putting a lot more lines on my mask, and I got to be a little more careful about where I'm putting stuff. Should make my guidelines a little bigger. So what I'm trying to do right now is check on the inside, because I've got the marks that I have made when I put it together. All the registration marks are on the inside. And what I'm seeing is that my eyes are right along where these registration marks are, just below them. So if I want to put a whole bunch of holes in here, maybe a little above, a little below, this could take a little while. I wonder how well. Well, the nice thing is, if I really mess it up, I can just make another foam one. Now, what I was thinking was how well I could see. I make the first hole from the inside because I can see the ink marks there. Then I start adding more holes from the outside. Now, I'm not too worried about the holes being perfectly aligned or even perfectly spaced. What I am worried about is if I was just to cut a big enough hole to be able to see through, that the screen would lay flat over the hole and not keep the curvature of the face. So hopefully, with all these holes to both see through and breathe, I'll also be able to keep the curve on the front of the face. That's going to work really well. Now, I had stretched the screen as much as I could again, and this iron carrying case is really handy today. And I'm going to use spray glue to stick the screen to the foam mask. I want a very thin coat of glue, especially on the screen. If I was just to use the brush, it would fill up all those little holes in the screen, which would be really bad. It is all over the desk. Oh no. Oh, and you didn't put paper down. Just like with contact cement, spray glue needs a few minutes to dry so the pieces will stick. I really try to just stick the center down and then work my way outward. Sometimes I need to pull up the screen and reposition it just to minimize the impending wrinkles. And wrinkles are going to happen. The trick is to keep them to a minimum. Is that it? I have glue all over my fingers. The acetone does remove most of it, but honestly, soap and hot water is probably best. I trimmed the extra off the mask, and I'm just making the face cover today. Yep, I can still see. Vision is reduced, but I can still see. It's actually kind of hard because the light's shining right at me and the rest of my room is dark, but I can still make out shelves in the back wall and the door there and the door over there. So yeah, this should work, especially in more of a con setting where the room isn't going to be this dark most of the time. You go into the auditorium and whatever, you know what it's like. Or maybe you don't, but I just need to follow along right underneath. Just follow along the line and cut the extra from the face. I plan to attach the next panels the same way, but before I spray any glue, I need to cover the clean solar screen with masking tape and paper. If I forgot to do that, I would have to start all over. And this time, I'm using some of the last of the previous screen pieces. This is only a quarter of the mask, so the screen parts that I had are going to fit no problem. Now the new panel needs to be covered and protected from the get it absolutely everywhere-ness of spray glue. But this glue is working really well, and I'm getting better at applying the panels. But what worries me is if any glue seeped through the screen while it was under the paper. But everything looks just fine, even if the blue painter's tape sticks better to the spray glue. So how many other round-faced blank characters can we think of? There's the drone workers from the original Black Hole movie, even though they were shiny, still, it'd be a way of potentially doing a Jawa mask, although fabric is easy enough, but there's a potential there because you have the hard points you can mount stuff to. I'm trying to think, what other characters have just this smooth black blank face? I mean, this could be interesting. Something I was really worried about was the spray glue soaking through. Because this is an open mesh, overspraying it, getting the larger chunks, the drops of spray glue that fly out, which happened, those could easily come through to the top surface. And it did happen just a little bit. There's a little bit right here. I can see a little bit of glue, but for the most part, it didn't. It actually behaved the way I wanted it to. I can still see. So I think it might be a little weird, but I can still see. What I want to do what I want to do next is actually paint it. My intent is even if you read the package for the solar screen, it calls it a charcoal color. I want it to be black because, come on, the masks are black, right? So I did a test where I actually sprayed the mask black, and you can see the difference. It's subtle, but it's there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray the mask down with, it's over here, my favorite car spray paint. It's the vinyl and fabric spray. This screen is vinyl coated in order to help it live outside, which is where it's supposed to be over your windows, right? So typical spray paint is not going to dry on this screen. Acrylic's going to be fine, but spray paint won't, or it shouldn't. So to be safe, I'm just going to use this black. So I'm going to spray the whole thing down, and then I can cut out the strips and glue those on and stick a shape on top. But this I'm going to do outside, because this stuff, nasty. Take that too. I'm much happier with this color. This is actually black as opposed to the charcoal that it was before. And that paint is great because it's a vinyl and I spray painted and it's dry. And it only took like an hour or so to dry. Anyway, I need to add the strips that go on it, which is, there's the one that goes right across the front, hides that seam. There's one that goes around the perimeter, and then there's the double track that goes down here that allows the mask to do the thing that my mask isn't going to do, right? Mine's just a solid piece. It doesn't move. It doesn't do anything special. The one in the show collapses or something. I have only seen a little bit. I need to watch the whole thing because it looks really good. So we're gonna make the strips. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and use more craft foam because it's black to begin with, and that'll make it a little bit easier to paint. What I have got is some thin black craft foam, maybe about 2 millimeters. But I'm gonna need 2 layers to make it across the face because I need to cut 2 layers to make the track that goes in the bottom of the face. I cut everything oversized, much wider than I needed. So after it gets glued, I can trim the sides and have clean edges. That's a much better size. The track was made the same way, just with a single layer running down the middle. More tape. I am going to use the brush with contact cement this time. And I really don't want to mess up the painted face of the mask. Contact cement dries pretty quickly on EVA foam, but the screen needs some help. Once it is dry, everything sticks just like it should. Now to do the same thing for the bottom of the face. More tape, more glue, more hair dryer, and more mask gets made. Now for a single layer around the edges. To get a long enough strip from the scrap foam that I have, I need to cut them diagonally. Then glue them around the outside of the mask. I use tape and a hair dryer as well, of course. Okay, I don't want to just leave the foam black. I chose to use black craft foam instead of a higher quality foam like HD foam because I can be a little more sloppy with painting it. It's all going to be black. I only really have to make sure to get the top. The sides are already black, right? So that was why I used this instead of my good standby HD foam. It's really subtle, like a very subtle difference. What I am seeing is more of how the light reflects off of the dry paint and not so much a blacker foam. Now acrylic dries fast, so I can move on to adding the shape to the face. We have 3 choices for what shape we want: triangle, circle, or square. Now I'm aware of a couple of my friends who have also made videos for this mask and they both did triangles. So I tape off a square. I tend to keep the sides straight and not let them bend outwards as the tape was stuck to the screen. I'm still concerned about filling up the open holes in the screen, so I have a dense chunk of polyfoam, or couch foam as I like to call it. And I lightly sponge paint the white shape over the screen. And it took just 2 coats to cover the black enough to look correct. Once more with the hair dryer, and the tape did its job perfectly. I guess I need an elastic strap. And, a hoodie, but... The only black elastic strap I have left over is from the first set of suspenders from my Mechagodzilla suit. Now, I don't think the strap needs to be this wide. It's just what I have in the shop. I apply 2 coats of contact cement to the ends of the strap and to the inside of the mask. Now, I didn't make the top strap right here. Turns out you do need it, so add that top strap if you make one of these. This mask was a lot of fun to make, and I put a list in the description for the materials used in this project. Yeah, I can still see this works. So I need the red hoodie or the pink jumpsuit or whatever it is that I need to have. That definitely needs to happen, but this is working. I like this a lot. This will probably be a really fun Halloween costume. I bet we're gonna see a lot of these. I'm realizing I probably should put a top strap on the elastic, but I'll do that in a minute. This is cool. One of the things that I had concern about, one of the things that was bothering me while I was making mine was all the wrinkles that appeared around the outside because I'm taking a 2-dimensional piece of screen and mashing it over a big compound curve, right? That had me worried until I looked really closely at one of the official images of one of the Red Guards. And if we look just right here, we can see that they also had wrinkles and they had to cut material out and very carefully try to fit it back together, causing these little gashes. So realistically, in the production, they ran into the exact same problem, and you could almost say that canonically, wrinkles like this belong in Squid Game masks. So I'm okay. While I was making this, well, okay, I'm jumping ahead. While I was making this, other people have Squid Game masks available as well. Before I started making the video, one of my patrons posted that they had made one, Strict Aphid. He's got his own YouTube channel. There'll be a link in the description just in case his channel's got a different name. He had put one out the day that I had decided, okay, that's what I want to do next. His is a solid EVA foam build, and I believe he went through with a soldering iron in order to get the texture on the outside, letting us all know on my Discord that, yeah, if you're going to be burning EVA foam, wear a mask because the fumes. Yes, definitely wear a mask. So as I'm building mine and putting it all together, I'm getting close to being finished. Another friend posts that he's coming out with a red Squid Game mask. And that's Stephen, SKS Props, Stephen K. Smith. He is coming out, or has come out, since from my point of view the video isn't out yet, but by the time you see me saying this, it's probably out. SKS Props has also done a complete EVA foam build Squid Game mask. You want to see that video? The link is in the description for that video as well. His is solid EVA foam using his HD foam. Oh, by the way, Steve is the guy that makes HD foam, the foam that I typically use in this channel. Yeah, that's Steve. Cool guy. Looking at his Instagram post, because that's all I've seen at this point, it looks like he also did the EVA foam shell, but then took a very fine bit with his Dremel and very meticulously did a series of small holes over the entire mask so you can see and you can breathe. And I do believe that that's kind of Steve's style. He's really big on using the Dremel and getting some really good texture detail in his builds. I'm really impressed with what Steve does. And by the way, Steve is the one that did the Dragon Ball Z pattern that Felicia and I did on the Sunday live stream. That's the same guy, the same channel. So if you haven't checked out Steve, go check out SKS Props. If you haven't checked out Strict Aphid, definitely go check out his channel because he's doing the same thing as well. And knowing that all of us have free patterns connected to the video, you have options on how exactly you want to make a Squid Game mask. Because I know there are going to be lots of different ways you can put together one of the Red Guard masks from Squid Game. But this is how Odin makes. I've got 5 cameras turned on and recording, and I'm standing here waiting for the computer to decide if it's going to boot or not, so I can look at the picture again. Do something. It's black, though. It's got a good black color to it. Just like the screen of the computer. Boot! I want to thank Lieutenant Loot, Nora Fox, Tim Watts, and all of my Patreon supporters. Patreon members at the $5 and above level get access to my private Discord, which includes weekly games with me, prop-related chat, and early access to live streams. My Patreon support is the #1 thing that makes this show possible. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe. Have an idea for something for me to make? Please leave a comment below. And if you make any of these projects, you can send me a picture.